Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Mill City Roast-Alongs. Today we are going to be roasting one of the many tasty coffees that just went up on the web, and just like my shirt, it's a Sumatra natural that is very exciting and very, very wild in flavor and character. One of the many conceptions, right, of Sumatra, we always think very earthy, very big body, and maybe not a whole ton of sweetness, but they've been getting so clean and very pleasant over the years. And this natural is doing just that. This came from Cafe Imports, from a mill that was in the Pantamusar villages, and it's just a very nice, very wild coffee. Bunch of mango, bunch of tropical fruit, very big sweetness, nice acidity. It's a lovely coffee. I highly recommend you try it out. So we're gonna go in, roast on our 2 kilo roaster today. We're gonna be doing a 1 kilo batch. We're gonna be charging at 405 degrees. Remember, we charge on drum temp here. So 405 degrees in the drum temp. We're gonna do a minute soak, starting off with low airflow after a minute. And then we have 1200 pascals for initial fuel, or 1.2 kPa. We're also gonna be utilizing a little bit of roast replay coming to RoastPath. Very cool, so it traces the profile, so it makes talking to all of you wonderfully easy. So we're coming up on temperature here. We just hit 405 and our ignition just went off. So I'm gonna go ahead and get myself settled in before we start roasting here. Temperature is coming back down. Remember, we always wanna catch it and charge on the downtrend. So when we come down in temp, burners turn back on, increase in temp, and then go down, charge. And it's actually taken longer than I expected. So we're actually going from 407 to 406 now. We're at 405. Gonna hit charge and drop that batch in. So my ignition is off, still just running at low fan speed. And now we have the marvelous couple of minutes where nothing's really happening. Like a lot of natural processes or anaerobic naturals that come from, well, Sumatra, Colombia, really almost any country that we don't associate naturals with, we always think Ethiopia natural, and roasting Ethiopia natural is kind of very, I don't know, seemingly different to me in comparison to like Colombia and Sumatra. There's just like, I don't know if it's like softer beans or just like a little bit longer in heat in like the mid phase. You just can't quite hit them as aggressive as you can those natural processes from Ethiopia. So what we're really looking at here is really long mid phase. I kind of look at this as, you know, you think about like sous videing the coffee in like the middle of the roast. So you're kind of like prepping it for getting into development. Once you're in development, you have, you can actually spend less time in development because you've spent so much time absorbing heat in that seed throughout the mid phase. So ignition just turned on at 1 minute. We're checking to make sure that our roast replay or automation is tracking how it should. Still at low airflow, and it's up to 1.2 kPa or 1200 pascals. Beautiful. So we're coming up on turning point. Looks like we are getting, see, it should mark here in just a second here. I'm seeing drum temp already starting to increase. Bean temp is marking turning point at 1 minute and 46 seconds, 227 degrees. Remember, these are numbers specific to my machine. You should always dial in to the system that you are on. So now we're just letting the roast ride and we're getting an idea about where's everything heading, right? ROR, rate of rise, starts to creep up. And we're gonna see that peak momentum show up at about 3.5 minutes. Remember, rate of rise is looking at everything that's been happening in the last minute, 2 minutes before it appears and starts giving you that data that you're looking for. So rate of rise is kind of that, you know, that magic crystal ball looking into the future, but it's predictive, right? We have to adjust things on the fly if things are running fast or running slow. So still holding steady on gas, rate of rise is coming up, creeping at 11 degrees per minute. And looks like we're gonna be topping out at about 30 degrees per minute, where our rate of rise is gonna peak, and then we're slowly gonna start to decrease. In about 45 seconds, our first adjustment that's gonna be happening, we're adjusting airflow to medium, getting ahead of that dry end so that any of that silver skin can kind of like work its way out of the drum, into the chaff can, keeping your drum nice and clean so nothing is sticking to the coffee, and starting to move some of that exhaust and moisture, kind of wicking it away out of the drum from drying the coffee. So my 22 hertz for low is now moving towards 26 for medium on our digital display here, which I'm confirming that it just increased. Perfect. It's like magic. Isn't that cool? No touching of the control panel. RoastPath is doing everything for us. Love it. It's gonna make these roast alongs so much easier, you guys. All right. So the next gas adjustment that we're doing as we get up into the mid phase, as we approach dry end, we're going to be decreasing gas from 1.2 to 1.6. So cutting it in half from what our initial fuel was. Now the digital 2K, for anybody roasting on this machine at home, we know this system banks a lot of heat. So kind of doing bigger adjustments can be helpful in elongating that midsection of the profile. If you don't get ahead of it, you kind of run away. You go all Dukes of Hazzard into that mid phase. So we're hitting 300 degrees bean temp now. We have a little bit of a citric hay straw kind of thing. And there's that sweet Hostess Wonder Bread that we got going on. Green to yellow, 4 minutes, 52 seconds at 305 degrees. If you are trying to match or replicate this profile, I highly advise use your temperature as your goal for dry end on your system, and then take the time to those objectives and just steer towards that direction. If you're on a smaller machine, you might be heading a little bit faster. So remember, you can always take the percentages of this profile and apply them to a coffee profile that's tasting good on your system. As we get up to 6 minutes, still haven't touched anything because automation. So we're moving from 0.6 and we're going down to 0.4. Minor adjustment. We did that big adjustment getting into the mid phase because coffee is becoming more and more volatile the hotter it gets. So we do a big jump getting into the mid phase. We do small jumps as we're kind of getting into the middle of the mid phase. And then we're gonna do one final small adjustment as we get up towards first crack, because we don't wanna get in there and get too hot, especially for this natural process. We don't wanna roast away that stuff that we love about this coffee, that tropical fruit, that wild acidity, that explosive jamminess that's in the cup. We wanna preserve all of that. So we're at 6.5 minutes in the roast, 341 degrees for bean temperature. Our next adjustment for decreasing gas is coming up here in about 10 seconds, down to 0.2. And that'll be our final gas adjustment that we do as we get into development past first crack. So with that gas adjustment, 651 at 347 degrees bean temp. Rate of rise is moving at 20 degrees per minute. I know on this system about 370 to 378 degrees, depending on washed or natural, you start to hear rolling first. So I know we're about a minute out, which looks like our anticipated projection for first crack is 8 minutes, 45 seconds, coming up on 7:20, and we're moving 18 degrees per minute. So 17 degrees per minute now. So we're sitting about 372 in a minute, and 376 on this profile is when we were getting first crack for this coffee. So we're sitting in a good spot. Looks like we're kind of just undercutting where we were on the last profile when we had originally profiled, but a little bit of deviation is okay. Kind of smells like a very kind of like a strawberry Pop-Tart with like a driving by a brewery. Kind of like nice maltiness, but like really coated in strawberry. Like it. 8 minutes, 364 degrees. It's about 11 degrees away from hitting first, and we're moving at 14 degrees per minute currently. Smelling very fresh. Coming up to 8.5 minutes, getting up to 370 degrees. We should be getting first here in about the next 30 seconds. Haven't heard an outlier quite yet. Sometimes with those naturals, you kind of get this like pit in your stomach where it's like, I haven't heard first crack yet, like what's going on? And you know, sometimes they're just a little later than you expect them to be. There it is, I heard one pop there. Pop. Pop. All right, we're gonna go ahead and mark that there. A couple more pops came through, so 378 first crack, so a little bit later than last time. And riding it out to about 392. So at about like 388 to 390 is when I'm really gonna be on the trier and make sure that I'm getting those notes of like something you really wanna eat. Something that's really kind of taking you back and being like, oh, there's that big fruitiness, there's that big kind of chocolatey, booming fudge cake thing that I wanted to find in that roast. Awesome, let's get it out. Much smoother. And it also looks for this temperature like pretty dark. You'll probably notice when you're roasting this coffee or other naturals that it's like things are a lot darker than they seem. So don't panic. If it looks a little too dark, you're probably okay. Unless you really just went off the rails and it's like, you know, 430 degrees, like that's, you know, I think that's a different roast level that we're looking at then. Very peachy, nutty, chocolatey. Some of those kind of like classic Sumatra traits, like a little bit of that kind of like earthy, like dark chocolatey kind of spice, but just like a lot of fruit like layered on top. This coffee is very complex and very fun. Coming up to anticipated drop temp. Looking for those fruit notes that we want. There it is. There's that booming kind of like wild berry Pop-Tart with that artificial drizzle on there. So we're dropping. Cooling fan and arms, come on. Blam. Nice. Until next time, enjoy this Sumatra and keep drinking the good stuff.